Frustration mounting among people in Jacksonville. Concerns about video showing police using force against citizens. And now the questions. Is it excessive force? Is there a pattern? Does the color of your skin determine the outcomes of interaction between officers and others? Our roundtable discussion and a look at some of the cases fueling the anxiety and the anger on This Week in Jacksonville. Thanks for joining us this Sunday morning. A 22-year-old Vernell Bing Jr. died in the hospital this week after being shot in the head by a 7-year veteran with the sheriff's office. That was 1 week ago today. Bing's family and community activists are speaking out. They held this rally Tuesday in his memory. And Bing's mother says her son has a criminal history, but she says he didn't deserve to be shot in the head Sunday. She added that in the neighborhood where her son was shot, young people are at war with each other.
They're going at each other because it's a war out here. And the leaders of that war is JSO.
Yes.
Right in this city it is.
That's right.
We want it to be fixed where if they shoot another child, we want all this corrected. We don't want it to keep going and on and sweeping it on the rug. It's time to lift that rug up and see how much of dust up under there.
Come on, sis, teach.
Now, Bing was shot after crashing head-on into a police cruiser. Following a 5-minute chase, officers say they spotted him driving that red Camaro, and they'd been looking for that car, wanting it in connection with a shooting last month. Now, we had our investigative unit, the I-Team, compiling data from our internal records here at News4Jax. Over the past 7.5 years, here's what we found. At least 70 people were shot by Jacksonville police, all males except for one woman. 41 have died, 29 were injured. 8 of those shot were not armed, and not all of the others were armed with a gun necessarily. Some were armed with a knife, a car, or had taken the officer's taser. 70 shot, 53 of them black males, 14 white males, 2 Hispanic males, and as we mentioned, 1 female. Now, breaking that down just a little bit further, the 53 black males made up 76% of all the suspects shot. Based on the last census data in 2010, Duval County's population is 30% African American. All right, so based on our records in search going back to 1996, no Jacksonville police officer has been criminally charged for any wrongdoing in a police-involved shooting. Since 2009, we found 3 officers have been reprimanded, 2 over the same incident, and both resigned during the review process. A third was reprimanded originally, later, we're told, reinstated. So if 7-year police veteran Officer Tyler Landerville had been wearing a video camera, the public would have a clearer picture of what happened when he shot Vernell Bing Sunday in Springfield. At least that's the argument being made by those who are urging the sheriff's office to equip officers with cameras. Sheriff Mike Williams sent us a statement this week. He reiterates that JSO is looking into what happened. He also says he's in favor of getting body cameras, but they're expensive to buy and maintain. The sheriff says he'll need to set aside a few $1 million for that to become a reality.
No racists, police, no justice, no peace, no race.
Several groups demonstrating are asking for Jacksonville Sheriff's officers to be held accountable after 3 high-profile cases. An officer beating Myra Martinez at the jail. This fight at a Northwest Jack's convenience store where video shows an officer punching a man several times. And now a police-involved shooting in Springfield where an officer shot this man in the head even though witnesses say he was running away.
No justice, no peace, no racists, police, no justice.
Many are demanding officers wear body cameras, but so far, Jacksonville's officers do not. The sheriff, Mike Williams, has told us before that he's looking at the possibility, but they'd be very expensive for such a large department that has around 1,600 officers on the street. Agencies across the country, big and small, already use the technology, and the government is offering grants to many who apply. In 2015, 73 agencies got grants, 21,000 cameras worth more than $19 million. And those include big departments like Miami-Dade, Chicago, Detroit, Orlando, also small ones like St. Mary's, Georgia.
So it is another tool.
Bradford County Sheriff Gordon Smith spending $60,000 ordering body cameras for his 25 deputies. Some already wear them, but they're not mandatory. He says while they can help, they're not the fix-all.
I have people come in and look at something that me and you would look at and go, yeah, he did that. And the people sitting here looking go, well, I didn't see that. And you go, wait a minute. You back it up and show it to them 10 times, they don't want to believe it.
This is from an incident in West Palm Beach. At first, it looks like the officers might have been excessive.
You got a hold of me, man.
But a wider angle shows an unruly and potentially dangerous suspect. We spoke with a captain of the Miami-Dade Police Department. They started using body cameras about 2 weeks ago. It's costing them about $5.5 million to buy the cameras, then maintain them for 5 years. They've got a few hundred more officers than JSO, but it goes to show that the move would not be cheap. We did ask Sheriff Mike Williams to appear with us today. His spokesperson told us that he wasn't available, also explained that it doesn't make sense to take part in any speculation or rumor at this point. And so in our next segment, we will try to get more from a law enforcement perspective. We'll do that with Gil Smith, the man who served 26 years in JSO. Right now, our table is nearly full here. Dexter Van Davis, Richard Brown, John Phillips all joining us. We've interviewed each of these gentlemen on separate cases. Each attorneys in our area. Today, the first time that we've been able to get together like this, and each of you representing some people in cases where police officers are seen on camera striking your client. So this is a chance maybe to make your case, so to speak. And I also want to bring up, we saw in some of the video there, the tension is kind of rising in our city about interaction between normal citizens and the police. Dexter, why don't you start the conversation here?
Well, I'll talk about a recent case is DeMarcus Brown. You can see the video that the officer is doing something wrong, but I guess when JSO look at that same video, they may see something different. Here it is, an innocent young man that's going in to check on his father at a convenience store that's being raided, and then he finds himself taken down by an officer, punched repeatedly, taken into a storage facility, punched again, only to be arrested for what they find is resisting arrest with violence. And they thought he was a drug dealer, but he wasn't. And not only that, his father was in there as well. You talk about videotaping, even not with body cams, but his father had a cell phone, and the officer knocked the cell phone out of his hand. And when the community see things like that, you know, officers are supposed to be there for safety, for community safety, but in our eyes, and talking to Miss Peoples, in her eyes, you got kids in the store, convenience store. They raided it in the middle of the day at 5 o'clock, maybe in the afternoon, and they put a lot more folks at danger. And not only did they do it to her victim, or now alleged defendant, but other citizens who were there shopping at that convenience store.
Well, one of the things, and I think all of us will want to weigh in on this, but one of the things I want to point out there is, right now, all we've got is one perspective, if you will. We've heard from Rhonda Peoples-Waters, you were mentioning, the attorney for DeMarcus Brown. We see the video, but we don't have that other side of the story. John or Richard, is it easy to jump to conclusions about who's in the right and who's in the wrong there?
Go ahead, Richard.
Well, I think sometimes it is as it appears to be. I mean, you know, the video doesn't tell everything, but it tells us something. And it certainly tells us that DeMarcus Brown, in that particular case, did not assault any police officer, didn't commit violence on any police officer. It shows that violence was committed upon him. And for them to then do that and then charge him with doing the very thing that they did is something of a disconnect in the way policing is done in Jacksonville.
All right.
And that's the sort of thing that has to change.
So, gentlemen, I think it gets a little uncomfortable here, but it's a topic in our city right now. Is race playing a part in any of the interactions that we're seeing? And John, let me come to you. Myra Martinez, your client here, and we've got video of what happened here. This is not an African-American woman. It's an African-American police officer. And in this case, the officer is held accountable kind of right away, arrested, fired, and what have you. Is that because the color of somebody's skin is different?
Well, she's Hispanic by origin, but either way, the issue with the reason Officer Borsati was terminated is because he wasn't yet in the powerful entity known as the Fraternal Order of Police yet. He didn't have his tenure by example.
First year
he was a rookie.
Officer.
And so they were able to fire him without a lot of the checks and balances that JSO has. So from that angle, it's not an isolated incident. But look at those videos. They weren't intentional. They weren't body cameras. They weren't police dash cams. It was a good Samaritan who pulled up with the dash cam, and then it was surveillance that really, that's not what it was supposed to do. That wasn't its objective, was to catch police misconduct, but it did. Our main concern was that we only got that very little snippet of 2 minutes and then made a big deal. Hey, she went unconscious. We know she was unconscious, and it took us a week to get the full video. And even then, Jacksonville Sheriff's Office released it to YouTube before they released it to the offender/victim. And we're dealing with that. And I know my fellow counsel here have dealt with that from the perspective of, we just want to know the story. Our client has been charged with a crime and is a victim of police brutality to some end. And we want to be able to resolve all of that without the frustrations that we're seeing now with the Bean case and things boiling up.
Yeah, so the two questions, DeMarcus Brown and Myra Martinez, more recent events. Gentlemen, you represent Kelly Wilson, who we did a story with 9 months ago or so. That's a case, and we want to show you video here as well, where she was kind of a bystander watching something happen and then got into an interaction with police where it was about her phone. They said, don't use your phone, put your phone down, or what have you. Where does that stand? Because after what you're going to see here with an officer striking her, again about the phone is missing, and we still don't have, I guess, JSO's perspective. What really happened? Why did that happen?
It's unbelievable that did happen. The fact that she has a phone, hadn't done anything wrong. They have no basis to demand the phone or take her phone. She bags away. They take the phone, then they punch her. They punch this female. 2 male officers punch her, and not only after the punch, when they get on the ground, they do knee strikes to release the phone for a woman who did absolutely nothing. And then to top that off, they bring charges against her. They batter her, they beat her, they tackle her, and then they bring charges against her.
So let me take that other perspective. What it looked like, and we can't hear this, unfortunately, looked like the police officers were giving her some instructions. Now, as Joe Blow, normal citizen, I need to follow those instructions, don't I?
Well, not if it's
Don't I
an
need to
illegal
comply?
instruction. That officers, we expect them to do things lawful. But an unlawful order, the law gives you the right to refuse an unlawful order. And what they was trying to get her to do was give up a cell phone, and that was unlawful. It had no basis.
I don't mean to interrupt. Consider for a moment, Kent, if you would just walk outside the studio, just taking a stroll down the street, and the police officer comes up to you and just tells you, take off your shoes and give them to me. Now, what would your
Raise the question in my mind, why?
Why do I need to give you my shoe, take off my shoes and give them to you? And what is your lawful authority to do that? And that is the bedrock basis of our country, is that we're not a police state, and that if a citizen is going to have something taken from them by a government official, which a police officer is, there has to be a legal basis for him asking that or demanding that. They can't just take your things.
Yeah. And
There are rules.
so there's about a minute left here, John.
There
go
are
ahead.
rules to the use of force, just like there are anything. They've been written down. And with Ms. Martinez's case, we not only had use of force in the parking lot, we had unreasonable use of force in the jailhouse facility, and then they let that poor girl lay there with face on the concrete for 15 minutes without checking on her. The only move was for Officer Borsati to push her against the wall. And then they sent the EMTs. The very officer that caused her the injury was able to send the EMTs away against their medical advice. Whether we're dealing with, the punching that was unnecessary of a guy just going into a store, or that manner of escalation, we need answers, and we need better accountability.
Well, I appreciate it. All of you have individual cases. I think in a broader perspective, there's a lot of folks in the community saying, we need answers. So thank you for your perspective this morning and talking with us. Coming up, a man with more than 25 years experience as a police officer in Jacksonville, our crime and safety analyst, Gil Smith. He'll join us and talk about why we may not have heard the answers yet. That's next on This Week in Jacksonville.